Snow fell lazily, as if it had changed its mind about being snow, dissolving into a milky haze. The taiga breathed dully, muffled, as though through a scarf. Branches crackled somewhere off to the side, yet it still felt like the forest was listening. Saveliy walked first. Long strides, every motion economical. Frost clung to his gray stubble, the old semi-automatic on his back like a second spine. A man who knew where the forest kept its heart. Danila trailed half a body behind. The city hadn't yet faded from his eyes. His felt boots were new, his pack too fresh, and a camera dangling from its strap kept snagging on the buttons of his parka. "Do you hear that?" Saveliy raised a hand. Silence thickened, heavy as a mattress of wool. A crack came from the left. Not a branch, something else. "Let's go." The forest closed in, pressed tighter. Between two cedars, a shape emerged. A low geologist's cabin mounted on sled runners. Metal spotted with frost. A door frozen into its frame. Windows dark like bruises. Shelter. Luck is when there's still a way back. A knife pried at the icy seam. The door gave, squeaking like a mouse. Inside it smelled of damp paper and old iron. On the table, maps with blurred ink stains. On the floor, an empty thermos. On the wall, a badge of the trust, stamped with a reindeer's profile. Above the tiny stove, a rusted pipe. Under the ceiling, a bundle of herbs long since turned to dust. Look, a recorder. A yellow brick of plastic, screen cracked. The button clicked, the tape rattled. A low, weary voice spoke. Day 3. Tracks again by the ravine. Footprint the size of a shovel. Hair on the branches. They circled the sleds at night. Thought it was a bear. No, people don't breathe like that. Found a tuft in the morning. Smells like iron. The tape wheezed and cut off. What do you mean, smells like iron? Blood. Saveliy raked the ash in the little stove. It was dry underneath. He found a few chunks of wood and struck a match. The fire coughed at first, then caught and settled into an even burn. Warmth pressed the smell of iron out of the air. Why did you bring me? You know how to listen. A camera has ears too. They said it's a beast with shovels for feet. A funny kind of horror story. Not a story. Work. The fire crackled. Numbness retreated from their fingers. The wind leaned a broad shoulder against the wall, and the cabin gave a quiet groan. On the map, a thick pencil line read, Cheremshanka Gully, Camp Trail, Bridge, Russells. Nearby were old dates, faded like scars. The last one had no number, only a single word, arrived. Who arrived? Saveliy listened to the wall. Outside, the snow fell in heavy installments, not like wind-blown. Once pause, twice closer, a third time right at the door. Danila reached for the camera. Saveliy's hand landed on top of his. Don't stick your head out. And if, not if, when. A shadow crossed the slit under the door. Someone stood flush against it, listening too. Something soft scraped the metal. Fingers? Fur? A gentle sound that sent gooseflesh running in opposite directions. The shadow lifted. Is it gone? A nod. A glance at the window. The glass bowed like a wave, leaving a tiny warped gap at the bottom. Danila crawled closer. Beyond the white veil, a stand of spruce loomed black. And tracks. Strange ones. A long toe, a wide heel. Like a foot, but not a foot. Not animal, human dressed up as a myth. Or a myth tired of being an animal. I'll shoot. The zoom pulled the spruces close. In the depths, a white mass stirred for a second, like a turned-out hide, then dissolved. The stove hiccuped. The flame tilted as if a palm passed over it. Draft. Not a draft. He's circling. taking our scent. Who's he? Those who need to will understand. Something clicked outside at window height. Again, along the roof slope. A low hum traveled the metal, like a giant bone comb being drawn across it. I hate when the forest talks without words. Get used to it. Saveliy looped a rope around the handle and cinched it to a table leg. The knife back in his pocket. Shoulder against the jamb. If it yanks, hold the left edge. Don't play hero. I'm a coward at heart. Perfect. Means we'll live. Instead of a yank silence. In it, you could hear a thin twig snapping in the stove. Hear Danila trying to breathe quietly. Hear water pulsing timidly under the snow nearby. On the table, the recorder stirred on its own. A click. A couple seconds of white noise. A voice as if from inside the room. If you hear it, don't look it in the eyes. Don't count. Don't call it by name. A name shortens the road. Click. Silence. What was that? Memory. Outside, a hand passed over the wall. The metal gave a tiny squeak. Footsteps. One. Another. A third farther away. A quick glance at the corner of the window. Something configured itself in the white. Taller than a man, like a fur coat but alive, and recoiled as if inhaling. Danila hugged his pack. Everything was going to plan, but it wasn't their plan. Sava. Quiet. They sat a long time. The flame found a steady rhythm. The wind changed its tone, as though a hand had lifted from the roof. The draft under the door stopped. A nod. We're going out. The rope slipped off. The door eased open under a palm. The air hit them with snow. Whiteness endless and mute. Around them a ring of prints. Even almost perfect. In the center their own tracks. Mixed with others. Seals in wax. Each deeper than you'd want. A wide heel, a drawn-out toe, what looked like fingers sticking to the snow. Between the prints, short dimples, as if it dragged its hands. Not wolf, not bear, and no human steps like that. And this look, at the edge of the ring, where a spruce bough drooped to the ground, hung a tuft. Not fur pile, white dingy, synthetic. On the snow beneath it, a thin black streak. Paint, or rubber. A costume, and something else. A foreign smell. Metal, machine oil, cheap tobacco, and fear. A lot of it. Wind punched from the right, dumping snow off the spruces. Far off, a short hollow clap, like a palm on an empty barrel. You hear that? I do. What is it? A rehearsal. So we'll believe. Saveliy stepped across the ring. Danila followed, careful not to tread on the seals. The forest ahead stood like a set piece. Straight trunks, even shadows. In that correctness, a slit. Narrow as a smile. A path. A snare. We're going anyway? We always go. The slit accepted them and immediately pushed the trees closer. Sound came in tight. Snow sifted into the hood. Branches brushed their shoulders like fingers. A turn right, a turn left. Pale opening. Clearing. A single crooked post. On it a rusty bell. On the nearby stake, a tin from ration stew, stuck onto a nail. Inside the tin paper. Hello. Keep out. We already didn't. The bell swung and tinked like a spoon on glass. The path dead-ended at the far edge of the clearing and dissolved. Between the firs, a low wooden crawl like a burrow. The icy lip was polished by sleeves. Perfect scarecrow. They don't scare you with what's scary. They scare you with what's ridiculous. They scare you with what you'll fill in yourself. We're going the wrong way. Slightly left, larches in a cluster. The snow there stiffer, cleaner. Under that clean, a print. One. An army boot. Next to it, another. A shuffle. Pivot. Gone. So there's a third. And not alone. Sava. What if all this is about us? It's always about us. A dry twig snapped off to the right. An inhale. A pause. A confident voice, lazy and mocking. Fellas, what's the rush? They turned. At the edge of the clearing, two men. Dressed warm but not for the forest. Black metal showing under their jackets. One wore a shaggy white throw carnival among the needles. The other had a cap shoved over one ear and a smile without warmth. The bell swung again and rang louder. Snow hung in the air. So, shall we talk? Saveliy and Danila stood at the verge. The pair across from them didn't hurry closer. The smile stretched too long on one face. The other adjusted the ridiculous white coat, like it weighed on him. Lost. We're going where we need to. Everyone thinks that here. The bell chimed again, louder than its size should allow. Silence stretched, the forest tightened. Saveliy stepped forward, eyes narrowed in measure. Metal flashed under their jackets, no doubt. Weapons. Who are you? Us? Owners of the path. Saveliy tightened the sling of his gun but didn't raise it. Danila felt sweat run down his back though the frost bit his face. We've no business with owners. We're after a beast. A beast, you say? The shoulders under the white throw twitched. Plenty of those here, but this forest likes jokes. In one corner, the beast. In another, us. And you, like a gift. The second lifted his rifle. The barrel rested at belt height. Not a threat, a hint. Saveliy edged closer to Danila and said quietly, "Keep the camera down." What, I can't shoot? You'll have time to shoot. If there's anyone left to shoot. A low sound rolled again. Like someone slowly drawing a bow across strings stretched the length of the forest. The two men traded glances. The one in the white throw frowned, as if the noise didn't sit right with him. What have you got out here? Danila asked. You ask too many questions. Saveliy spotted a fresh print settle into the snow near their boots. Not his, not Danila's, and not the other two. The track seemed to have grown straight out of the whiteness, deep with long fingers reaching forward. That's not us, he said softly. But everyone heard. White throw snapped around. The forest stood empty, but the silence rang. Go! Saveliy nudged Danila. Before they box us in. Don't move! One of the men shouted. Nobody walks out of here just like that. Saveliy didn't answer. He angled toward the clearing's edge, skirting them in a curve. Danila followed, careful not to step into any stranger's tracks. The tension hung so thick it felt the air might crack. Then the bell wailed. Not a chime, full voice, as if someone swung it with both hands. The two spun toward it. In that beat, Saveliy seized Danila by the shoulder and dragged him into the trees. They plunged through the branches. Snow slapped their faces, stung their skin. A shout behind. Freeze, you! A shot. Snow erupted in a plume at their feet. Danila yelped but didn't stop. Faster! The forest gripped them. Branches lashed their cheeks. Snow churned underfoot like it fought every step. Saveliy led without falter, as if he'd known the route all along. Danila stumbled but kept up, anything to not fall behind. Voices and footsteps chased them. But soon another sound smothered both. A low, thick respiration, as if something huge was breathing far too close. Danila glanced back. For a heartbeat he saw it. In the white glare, a figure moving. Tall, massive. It wasn't running. Advancing, lifting its legs too high, as if in slow motion. Save! Danila cracked. There! I know! The branches broke open suddenly. Ahead, an old bridge crossed a frozen creek. Boards under snow, rails long rotted, but the span still held. Saveliy hit the bridge first, tested his weight. It groaned but held. Move! Danila rushed after him. The boards keened underfoot. Something cracked. He clutched the remains of the railing and made it halfway. Another shot. A bullet smacked the tree beside him. Chips stung his face. Saveliy was on the far bank now. He turned, covering with the gun. A board under Danila's boot snapped and fell away. His leg dropped into emptiness. Save! Saveliy lunged, caught his shoulder, yanked. Danila skidded onto the snow, nearly losing the camera. The bridge groaned, then sagged and collapsed at the center like a lung exhaling. A curse spit the air behind them. The two men balked at the edge, unwilling to jump. But the white figure kept coming. It stepped out of the trees and halted right at the broken span. Wind lifted the snow like dust and swirled it around. And in that white spiral, the figure stood motionless, as if waiting. What is that? Danila managed. Not now. Run. They plunged deeper into the woods. They ran until their throats burned, until the forest howled like a great bell and every branch seemed bent on catching their sleeves. Saveliy didn't falter. His stride cut the snow with purpose, as if he had walked this way 100 times before. Danila stumbled, gasped, but refused to fall behind. Fear gave him more strength than his lungs. Behind them came voices, footsteps. Then all of it drowned in another sound. Low, heavy, so close it seemed to breathe against their necks. Danila glanced back. For a heartbeat, through the swirling white, he saw it again. A figure moving through the haze. Towering, broad, deliberate. Its steps were enormous, its pace unhurried, as though time itself parted around it. Save! His voice cracked. It's there. I know. Branches broke open, and ahead rose the outline of a roof, sagging under snow. A barn half collapsed. There. They threw themselves against the door. A plank snapped, snow poured in with them. Darkness swallowed them whole. Inside it stank of mildew and stale diesel. Empty barrels, scraps of cloth, a rusted rake in the corner. Saveliy dropped onto the floor with his rifle across his knees. Danila collapsed beside him, camera clutched like a stone. You saw it. I saw it. That wasn't a costume. No, the costume was out there too. But this is something else. The world outside hushed. Only the heavy fall of snow, now and then dropping in clumps from the roof. Danila lifted the camera, checked the screen. On the tape, just a blur of white, but too huge for a man. The image shook with running, then cut to black. I've got it on record. A record isn't proof. It's only a beginning. They fell quiet. The barn cooled. No ember here. Only a gray light leaking through the cracks. Danila listened. At first it was silence. But the longer he listened, the less silent it felt. Like someone waiting in the corner, patient, still. He rose, stepped closer. Something rustled under a pile of rags. He ripped them aside. Beneath was a box. Iron lock long ago broken. Inside, scraps of paper. On the top sheet, the words stood clear. Expedition. Third camp. Contact possible. Below, dates. Old and nearly erased. Sava, look. They knew. They were searching. Wind slammed the wall. The barn shuddered. Splinters fell from above. And then that low growl again, deep like the earth itself shifting. Is it here for us? Or for someone else? Danila pressed his eye to a crack between boards. Tracks scored the snow outside. Fresh, deep, leading down the hollow, looping, as if whoever left them had been drawing circles on purpose. Something crashed behind the barn. A tree split or was pushed down. Saveliy rose, gun at the door. A second. Then silence again. Only the heavy snow. Danila leaned back to the crack and froze. Just a few paces away, a figure stood. White mass against the dark trees. Not moving, only watching. It's here. I know. The figure swayed, then slipped into the spruces. They waited longer, counting the heartbeats in their throats. Then Saveliy nodded. We're leaving. They stepped into the night. The snow lay flat, untouched, as if no one had ever stood there. Only farther off stretched a line of tracks, threading into the trees. The man forced a grin, but fear cracked through his eyes. There is no it. There's only us. And in that instant the wall shook with a growl. Low, cavernous, air trembling in its wake. The fire bent, as though blown by a vast breath. No one spoke. The growl came again. Closer. The growl cut off every word. The man at the door snapped, flung it wide, rifle leveled. Snow burst in, a lash of cold air. The white mass stood only a few strides away, then slipped into the spruces, vanishing as though it had never been. Wind, he muttered again, but his knuckles whitened on the stock. The recorder clicked once more. The tape spun on its own. A voice hissed through the static. Don't watch, don't name, or the path shortens. The reel stopped. The second man whispered, It's here. Outside a thud. Heavy, deliberate, circling the walls. Then another above them. Snow slid from the roof, crashing to the ground. Saveliy lifted his gun. It's not after you. It's after us. The man at the door forced a grin, but fear tightened his jaw. There's no it. Only us. The growl returned, louder, so deep it seemed to come from the ground itself. The fire in the stove tilted, almost died. For a long moment no one moved. Then the man with the rifle cursed and rushed outside, firing blindly into the white. The second followed. Saveliy and Danila shared a glance. The fire crackled nervously, spitting sparks as though warning them. Shots cracked, echoed, died in the taiga. But the growl drowned them out, closer, heavier. Danila stumbled to the window. Snow swirled in thick veils. A black shadow cut through it. Massive, moving between trunks too fast for its size. Save! It's there! Stay close! Saveliy flung the door open. Wind slammed into them, carrying snow in sheets. Outside, the clearing was torn apart. Snow churned, blood staining the drifts. One of the men lay crumpled against a tree, head twisted at a wrong angle, rifle flung aside. The other was gone. Only gouged tracks led into the forest. Move! Saveliy shoved Danila forward. They ran. Snow clawed at their legs. Breath broke into clouds. Behind them, the forest roared. A sound too deep, too alive. For an instant, it seemed to bellow right above their heads. Saveliy shoved Danila sideways. A ton of snow collapsed from the branches, crashing onto the spot where they'd been. He's playing with us. Why? To wear us down. They ran along a ravine, branches clawing their faces, breaking under their hands. Ahead, the second man appeared. His steps faltered, rifle barking single shots into the void. Hey! Danila shouted. The man glanced back, eyes wild. He opened his mouth to speak but never managed. From behind him, the white figure surged forward. One massive arm slammed into his chest. The sound was a bag of bones crushed at once. His body flew sideways, buried in snow. Danila choked. Sava. Quiet. They dropped behind a fallen trunk, and the creature stepped onto the clearing. Tall, immense. Snow slid from its shoulders like from a moving cliff. Stopped, turned its head. Its eyes. Danila nearly screamed. Dark, no whites. Yet within them burned reflections of fire that wasn't there. The creature lifted one hand, dragged it across the snow. perfect line straight as a mark. Then it stilled, gaze fixed on them. Don't look at its eyes. I'm trying. The head tilted. From its chest came a new sound, not beastly. Half a growl, half a voice. Human threaded through. Then suddenly it recoiled, stepped backward into the storm of white, and was gone. Silence. Danila collapsed to his knees, gasping. That was him. It's only the beginning. Saveliy pulled him up. They moved again, keeping close, every step crunching too loudly in the snow. The forest listened, counting. They pushed deeper into the forest. Snow swallowed their steps, the silence pressing close on every side. Time thinned, stretched, each movement felt like a dozen. At last the trees thinned. Another shape emerged. Not a hut this time, but a ruined cabin. Walls sagged, roof half collapsed. Yet inside, a fire flickered. Saveliy slowed. Someone's still there. Or something, Danila whispered. They slipped through the crooked doorway. On the floor a fire burned low, the smoke curling up to broken rafters. Around it sat 3 figures. Hollow faces, eyes darting. One arm bound in filthy cloth, another clutching an axe across his knees. Who are you? Saveliy asked. We're the same as you, one croaked. Only we came sooner. Danila scanned the room. In the corner, hanging from a hook, was a white cloak, synthetic pile. The same that had left false tracks. They followed. The trail led deeper, through ravines and toppled trunks. Sometimes the prints broke off, as though the creature had lifted clear into the air and come down again. At last they reached a clearing. In the snow, scattered boards, the remains of a fire, blackened logs. Snow had covered most, but enough remained. People had been here not long ago. Danila stooped, picked up a rusted mug. Inside, dried blood. Whose was this? Doesn't matter. Look there. At the edge of the site rose a wooden cross, lashed together from thin poles. On its beam hung a tuft of white pile. The wind rocked the cross until it squealed. Saveliy stepped close, stretched a hand, but stopped short. Don't touch it. Why not? If it left that, then it was meant to be left. They moved on. The snow deepened, every step heavier. The taiga thickened too, closing the way with shadows. Up ahead a light flickered, dim, wavering. Fire. They froze. Someone's alive. Or not. The glow leaked from behind a wall of fur. Saveliy parted the branches first. A hut, small, roof sagging inward, yet fire glowed within. Footprints scarred the snow at the door, human. Danila's heart thumped too loud. Do we go? We already are. They stepped closer. The snow groaned beneath them. The hut tilted, one wall sinking slower than the others. The roof had caved, but light still seeped through the gaps. The fire inside pulsed low, as if someone had hidden it on purpose. Saveliy raised a hand. Danila stopped beside him. Quiet all around, snow falling in fat clumps, smacking against hats and shoulders. Footprints led to the door, 2 sets. Heavy, deep, off to the side smaller, lighter ones. 2 of them. Maybe 3. No. 2. The door creaked at the touch, swung a little. Heat brushed their faces. A stove burned inside, logs snapping. The air reeked of fat and something sour. Mugs sat on the table. And people. 2 men. One on a stool with a rifle across his knees. The other leaned on the wall, eyes fixed on the door before it even opened. Well, guests. Saveliy stepped forward, straight-backed. Danila lingered at the threshold, camera heavy on his chest. We're looking for shelter. And found us. The man on the stool smirked. His face was coarse, gray, deeply lined. His eyes held no fear, no surprise. Only a sour calm. Forest's big. What exactly were you looking for? Tracks. Everyone looks for tracks. Think they'll meet a monster. And then they meet us. He tapped the rifle stock with a finger. Sit. Saveliy lowered himself nearer the stove, placing his gun beside him. Danila slid onto the edge of a bench, never looking away from the second man. That one stood still as a shadow, a weapon in his hands too. Who are you? Us? We're the ones nobody's waiting for. Saveliy's gaze didn't waver. Those tracks outside yours? Who else? People want fairy tales. We give them one. Danila breathed out. Why? To live. Daytime in the forest, night around the fire. Food runs out. Cows vanish in the village? That's us. Sheep too. What else can we do? He lifted a mug, drank. Foam clung to his lips. And the beast, you invent the rest yourselves. We just help. Something creaked outside. Everyone stilled. The man on the stool scowled at the door. You hear that? Silence. Only the stove crackling. But within that silence, something alien. He came, whispered the second. The man with the rifle jumped to his feet, yanking it up. Nonsense. Nobody's coming here. But the creak returned, closer this time, as if something passed along the wall. Saveliy's hand brushed his gun. Danila froze. The door shifted. Snow dumped off the roof with a crash. Wind? The man muttered, though his voice lacked belief. Danila peered through a crack and recoiled. Outside, in the swirling white, something loomed. Huge, tall, still. Someone's there. Shut it. The man lunged to the door, yanked it open, rifle ready. Snow whipped in. The white bulk stood a few paces off, then melted into the trees. Told you. Wind. He slammed the door, leaned back against it. But his fingers gripped the rifle too tight. Then the recorder on the table sparked alive. No one had touched it. The tape whirred, and a hoarse, foreign voice rasped. Don't look. Don't count. Don't call by name. Or it will find you. The tape snapped off. The man at the door paled. Where the hell did that come from? Danila said nothing. Saveliy only watched the fire. And then the sound again. From above this time. Heavy, deliberate pacing the roof. Saveliy stood. It's not after you. It's after us. So it was you. Yes. But not everything. Understand? We played at scaring. But then, he came himself. The fire popped. The wind moaned against the boards. He's real, the man whispered. We thought a legend, a mask. But now, outside, a step pressed the snow. Heavy, even, like the forest itself moving closer. Everyone turned. The fire sagged. Smoke darkened. The door began to open. A figure filled the frame. White, massive, shoulders dusted with snow that melted as though alive. The air reeked of wet fur and blood. It stepped inside. The boards groaned beneath its weight. The glow from the fire caught its eyes. Black, deep, rimmed with something that shimmered. No one breathed. The creature's shadow stretched across all of them. One man gripped his axe, muscles twitching. Don't, Saveliy said, voice quiet but iron. The man froze, trembling. The beast tilted its head. One clawed hand slid along the wall, leaving a groove in the rotten wood. Snow dripped from its pelt, darkening the floor. The smell of soil, metal, and something older filled the room. It stopped by the fire. The three men sat stiff, children before a stern teacher. Then it did something none of them expected. Slowly, it reached for the cloak in the corner, tore it from the hook, and tossed it into the flames. The pile caught at once, spitting acrid smoke. It knows, Danila breathed. Knows who hides behind stories, Savely said. The beast stepped back, eyes traveling over each of them in turn. Then it let out a growl so deep the fire shivered, flames flaring like from a sudden wind. The door slammed shut on its own. Darkness fell thick, broken only by the fire's last glow. They lunged to the windows, but outside nothing. Only the white wall of snow. "Is it gone?" one whispered. "No, it's waiting," Savely said. He checked his rifle. Danila clutched the camera, its lens trembling in his hands. The three by the fire exchanged broken looks. "We didn't think," one stammered. "We only wanted to scare, but it came on its own." "How many were you?" Savely asked. "5. Now 3. At that moment something slammed into the wall. Boards groaned. Splinters rained. A second strike hit the roof. Snow cascaded inside, smothering the fire. The room sank into half-dark. And then it returned, out of the shadows, vast, filling the space. Its arms barely fit through the doorway. Its eyes fixed on them, unblinking. One of the men broke first. He screamed, swung the axe, blade burying into its fur. The sound was stone struck by iron. The creature's head snapped. One motion sent the man crashing into the wall. The board splintered, his body went limp. The others froze. Even Danila forgot to breathe. The creature leaned over the dying fire. His paw sank into the embers. Sparks hissed, clung to its coat, but didn't burn. It lifted a flaming log and hurled it across the room. The walls lit with sudden red, and they saw marks carved into the wood. Circles, scorch signs, long clawed lines. Not theirs, not human. "We didn't make those," one of the survivors whispered. "We didn't even know." The creature turned. His gaze fell on him, long, crushing. The man dropped to his knees, hands over his face. Then the beast shifted its attention to Savely and Danila, took a step closer. The smell of blood thickened, damp fur choking the air. "Don't look," Savely whispered. "I can't." The beast paused. Its eyes fell on the camera. Danila felt it, the stare piercing the lens. The screen flickered, image distorting, lines bending, as if not only memory but the device itself refused to hold its shape. The creature backed to the door, growled once more, deep enough to rattle the beams, and slipped out into the storm. Silence returned. Only smoke, only the stench of fear. Savely lowered his rifle. This is just the beginning. The night in the taiga thickened like tar. Snow had stopped, but the air stayed heavy, packed with whispers that couldn't belong to wind. The cabin cooled fast. The stove had collapsed under the fall of snow. Only a few glowing coals stubbornly held out. The people left inside didn't speak. They sat scattered in corners, faces drained, eyes hollow, like the walls had already claimed them. Savely rose first. His shadow stretched long across the broken planks. He checked the door, cracked it open, and stepped into the dark. Danila followed, refusing to look back. The snow outside lay smooth, erased, as if every track from the last hours had been swallowed. Only far ahead a dark slit broke the whiteness, a path cutting into the forest. They went that way. The trees pressed tighter. Branches dipped lower, brushing their faces like hands trying to hold them back. Every step sank deeper than it should have, as though the ground counted and weighed them. Even the crunch of snow vanished. Their boots moved in silence, as if they walked on nothing. Only breath remained alive. At last the forest opened suddenly. A clearing, round, as if carved with a knife. Stones jutted from the snow, coated in ice, their surfaces etched with faded marks. Circles, lines, strange sigils. Between the stones, prints, enormous, too wide, Too long. Not human. Saveliy halted at the edge. Danila raised the camera. The lens flickered, shuddered. The screen warped, lines rolling. Electronics couldn't hold what lay in the circle. Wind cut off at once. The quiet pressed down like a ceiling. Steam lifted from under the snow, thin tendrils rising between the stones. A shadow slipped along the clearing's edge. Long, stretched, neither beast nor man. It circled, and the prints it left sank deep. Yet as soon as snow fell, they sealed over, as though the taiga was hiding them. Danila stepped forward. The ground trembled. A faint ringing rippled through the air. His camera blinked, then went black. From the far side, a figure emerged. White, vast, like it had risen from the earth itself. Its gaze fell straight into the center of the stone ring. The carvings glowed faintly, absorbing something unseen. Air thickened. Each breath dragged like wet cloth. Snow lifted in a spiral, swirling into a storm that erased the forest. Only the circle remained. Only the figure. Saveliy stood unmoving, granite against the storm. Danila dropped to his knees, the ground throbbing under him like a heart. He realized this wasn't chance. Not a shelter, not a trap. This was the place they were meant to reach. The figure raised its head. Steam poured from its mouth like breath from a furnace. It stepped into the center. Stones hummed, earth cracked, darkness pressed closer. And then another form, black, thin, towering, woven from smoke. It slid out of the snowstorm, silent, unreal, and crossed into the circle. The marks on the stones blazed brighter. Lines of power stitched the ground together. The air groaned. Snow melted to black soil. Danila understood there had never been just one. The tracks all this time belonged to both. White and black, reflection and source. The two creatures faced one another. Their voices merged, half growl, half language older than memory. Snow exploded upward in a column. Danila shielded his eyes, but through his fingers the world bent, broke, light and dark fusing. The circle turned to a whirlpool. Stones quaked, earth split, the air sucked everything inward. The taiga screamed without sound. Saveliy stepped into the center. Between them, his rifle lowered, his body defiant. The white leaned close, the black stretched taller. Their eyes met above the man. And then stillness. The whirlpool froze. Snow suspended. Stones stopped shaking. A balance locked in place. Danila collapsed into the drift, air rushing back into his lungs. It wasn't over, only paused. The figures vanished. The stones dimmed. Snow fell calm again, sealing the earth. Saveliy turned. His face unchanged, but his eyes no longer the same. They walked back into the forest. But the snow no longer felt like snow. Each step echoed, counted. Behind them, faint and steady, a pulse beat through the ground. The taiga hadn't let them go. The road back wasn't a road. The taiga folded into a corridor with no exit. Branches arched low. Snow pressed from above. Every step dragged them deeper, though they thought they walked out. Saveliy led. His silhouette was steady, but his shadow stretched unnaturally long, farther than the moon's light should allow. Danila trudged behind, each stride short, swallowed by ground that seemed to measure him. The snow made no sound now. No crunch, no echo. Only breath remained, sharp and raw. Ahead light, uneven glimmers, the outline of a village. Crooked roofs, wooden fences, smoke frozen above chimneys. Human, familiar. But the closer they came, the stranger it felt. The fire in windows didn't flicker, didn't sway. It wasn't light, it was paint. They stepped onto the first street. Snow untouched, no tracks. Houses stood hushed, doors shut. No dogs, no voices, only glowing panes. Danila pressed his face to a window. A lamp burned inside. A table, a knife, a loaf of bread. No one. They moved on. Second house, light, but empty. Third, the same. The village looked alive but was hollow inside. In the square, by the well, snow lay smooth, too smooth. Saveliy knelt, brushed his hand across it. The surface was packed, hard. Beneath, faint lines showed. Circles, signs, the same as on the stones. A shiver crawled Danila's skin. The circle had moved. Now it lived here among houses. The wind rose suddenly. Flames in windows trembled for the first time. A moan drifted down the street, long, drawn out, as if someone breathed across the whole village at once. Doors creaked open one by one. Hinges groaned, but no one stepped out. Only emptiness stared from inside. Then, from the far end of the street, a silhouette appeared. Tall, white. It walked slowly, and with each step the lights in the windows went out. One by one, swallowed by dark. Saveliy raised his rifle but didn't fire. Danila stumbled back, fell into the snow. His camera flicked on by itself. The lens turned toward the figure. The screen trembled. Waves rippled across it. The shape stopped by the well. Its eyes flared with black fire. Snow around it began to sink, collapsing into a funnel. The same circle from the taiga, only now in the heart of the village. The last lights died. Darkness smothered houses, streets, sky. Only the pulse remained, low and booming, like a buried heart. Danila scrambled to Saveliy's side. Together they stood at the edge of the square, watching as the figure bent over the well. Its massive body slid down into the black, vanishing as if down a shaft with no end. When it disappeared, the funnel sealed. Snow smoothed itself flat. The windows lit again all at once. The village looked the same as before, silent, lit, untouched. But Saveliy and Danila knew. The taiga had moved here. What they had seen no longer belonged to the forest. If this tale reached you and you want more, stay with us. Subscribe, leave a like, so you don't miss the moment when the next story knocks at your door. And write in the comments one word that clung to you tonight, because our next tale may begin from it.